We are back live and exclusive here in Jakarta at Gbk Rugby Pitch. Our next semi-final is going to be a big one here. This is the women's pool, and we have the Cup semi-final number 1 between the favorites Singapore and the UAE. And they're on the pitch now, running onto the pitch, ready to go for the first semi-final of the Cup in the women's pool. Singapore v UAE. The UAE in their green strips, running from right to left of your screen, and they will kick off. This should be a big matchup here. Looking forward to the action in this first semi-finals of the women's pool. The UAE v Singapore. And the referee blows time on. Some miscommunication there to start off from Singapore. And the referee will blow up a knock-on with the scrum and feed to UAE in some pretty handy field position here. An opportunity to get points on the board. But the referee has said that it's a knock-on from UAE, despite the fumbling from Singapore. First scrum of the game. From the base of the scrum, Singapore goes to the blind side, but elects to go back to the open side, right up the middle. Singapore now from their 22, using the ball, spreading it out wide, and that's a penalty to Singapore, UAE offside. Singapore tap and go. She shows the ball, decides to hold on to it. And that's another penalty to Singapore. Sorry, that's a penalty to UAE. Singapore on the back foot now, having to defend. That's big number 8 from UAE. That's Tara Cooney taking the ball up. UAE now using the ball inside the 40, inside the 22. It's number 11. That's a great tackle from Singapore. And she goes into touch. That was number 11 for the UAE, Jade Cunningham. And a great cover tackle from Singapore. Singapore line out, 8 meters out from their own try line. That's a good lift from Singapore. She ducks under one tackle there, but not from the second. Tackled on her 22. That's a good clean out from Singapore, but they're in need of a scrum half there, and it's not coming. Penalty to the UAE. Quick tap here, using the blind. That's number 2 for UAE there. Sandy Naylor, and that's a penalty. Not releasing there, says the referee. Exciting stuff from both teams early in the match. Singapore seems stuck here in their own 22. Haven't been able to get out of their own danger zone. And that's a kick for touch. And it goes out. 25 meters from their try line. It will be their line out. Singapore now with the opportunity to attack from deep within their own half. It's another line out win for Singapore. Singapore now spreading the ball, but that's a loose pass. Pressure on the number 8. But the referee has called a penalty. Being offside there. Singapore now from the 40, the dummy. She dummies again. It's number 10 for Singapore running across field, but she drops the ball. And the referee says that's a knock-on. Scrum feed to the UAE. Little bit scrappy here, but Singapore tried to steal it away. Penalty to UAE. Still in the Singapore's side of the halfway. Singapore have yet to penetrate into UAE's half. And that's a great ball on the blind side on the far right for the UAE. It's a runaway try. First blood to UAE. Quick thinking there from the UAE team, using that far blind side. Nobody home. UAE 5, Singapore 0. Kick to come. It looks good, but it's away to the left. Unsuccessful, the score remains UAE 5 over Singapore 0. That's great vision there from UAE to go to the right, use that short blind side. Great vision from number 5 to pick up their winger there. I think that's number 11, Jade Cunningham, in for the try. And the score is 5-0. And it's UAE again. UAE down the touchline. Their big number 4. Just tackled there. UAE now using the ball. They're attacking. That's big Cooney. Cooney gives it out to her winger number 9 there, Alex Cook. Alex Cook still with the ball. Offloads to Cooney. And Cooney again to Cunningham, and it's another try. Jade Cunningham with her double. Back-to-back tries there for the winger. UAE now 5, Singapore 0. It's great sustained pressure here from UAE. The Singaporeans have not seen the other half being kept in their own half. And that attempt of conversion is unsuccessful as the halftime hooter sounds. But the referee will play on. UAE will get us underway. And Singapore have let that bounce. Playing advantage is the referee on the short blind side. And UAE decide to kick it into touch. And we will have halftime now with UAE 10, Singapore 0. We'll be back.
That's the halftime. UAE leading 10 points to 0 over Singapore in this semi-finals of the Cup Clash. And up next would be India versus Indonesia, the home team. And we have some exciting finals coming in the men's category, the gold medal match between Afghanistan and the gold medal match for the men's category would be Afghanistan versus Singapore. And that'll be later today. That's going to be some interesting game indeed. And it's all about the promotion to Asia Rugby 7 Series. Whoever wins, the men's gold medalist and the women's gold medalist will jump into the top tier.
Ready to get started in the second half in this semi-final, the first semi-final clash between Singapore and UAE. The winner of this match will go straight to the final this evening. Singapore to kick off, running from right to left of your screen. The UAE, all the pressure on Singapore in the first half. In fact, Singapore have not seen the other side of the field in this match yet. And now it's UAE returning the ball back from the kickoff to start in the second half. They set it up, a good clean ruck. UAE with all the confidence. That's a good tackle from Singapore. Setting it up again is UAE. Fumble backwards there from Cunningham. Cunningham straightens up, settles the play down. That's a good clean out, but it is a penalty to Singapore, not releasing. Holding on to the ball a little too long. Singapore then with a chance to put some points on the board early in the second half, get back into the game. Little bit of a jig there from Singapore. Can she pop the ball away? No, she can't. She's caught. They set it up, a good clean ruck. Swinging it out to the left. Here is Singapore. That's number 12. That's Jane. Pops it back on the inside. And there is a little knock on there from Singapore. Good covering defense coming in from the UAE. We have an injury, it looks like here, and the referee has blown timeout. Number 1 for Singapore is Amanda Lin. She seems to be in some sort of pain. These players from UAE, they're big, they're lanky, but they can move as well. They have speed to burn. And the score is 10-0 in their favor. And the scrum now to pack in with the UAE feed. 5 meters from the UAE try line. That's a good tackle there from Singapore. UAE's trapped. They need to clean out. And that's a clearing kick, but it doesn't go too far. Just over the 22, approaching the 40. Singapore clean up. Singapore can get away from the defender. But she's well tackled again. Singapore get the ball into the 22. What can they do from here? They need a quick ball and they get it. They swing it fast to the left. Number 6, run around. Good hands. It's still Singapore, 20 meters from the line, but the referee calls penalty, and it's Singapore with a quick tap and go. Singapore, can they get in there? Try! Try for Singapore, number 6, Hugh Min Chong, getting Singapore back into the game. It's 10-5. Good try. The referee asking the UAE players to get out of the way as Singapore try to convert. And that was number 6, Hugh Min Chong, unsuccessful with converting her own try, but she gets them back into the game. It is 10-5. Good try to Singapore, using the width of the field, and Chong backing herself, getting around the defense, the big palm, in for a nice try for Singapore. Restart then. And this will not go the 10. In fact, it didn't travel anywhere past the halfway line, and it will be a free kick to UAE. UAE now from in the center of the pitch, 50 meters. on the halfway line. Tried to put that ball back on the inside, but she wasn't ready for it, and she's upset with herself. UAE knock on. Scrum feed for Singapore, right in the middle of the pitch. Scrum down. Singapore feed. Singapore from the base of the scrum now. That's good hard defense from UAE. Singapore set up. Switching it back to the left. And that's a good tackle from Cooney all over the Singapore player. Singapore forced back now. Singapore straightening up. That's a nice pop pass from the 40. She's over the 50. Can she go all the way? UAE is in pursuit. Singapore, that's number 8. That is Ong Pei Yi. Great run. And that's a penalty to Singapore. UAE defense not rolling away. They take a quick tap. Singapore are on the attack. Can they equalize? The ball went astray, but the referee will call the penalty, playing advantage. UAE offside, 5 meters from the try line. Singapore, that's Samantha Teo. Samantha Teo goes herself. What a great solo effort from Samantha Teo of Singapore that levels the game at 10-all. That was a great individual effort there from Teo, number 10. She saw that the penalty was given, wasted no time, tap and go, right underneath the post. Scores a level as we wait this attempted conversion. It is unsuccessful. Unsuccessful there. Scores are tied, 10 apiece, Singapore and UAE. We're not far from the final whistle, final blow, but here's the try again from Samantha Teo. Bit of a left foot step there, and she's over. Great effort. Great solo effort. Only 30 seconds remaining in the game. That's a deep kick from Singapore. And the ref sees a knock on. This is a great opportunity for Singapore. Final seconds of the game. The scores are tied. This is what they dream of. Winning in the final seconds of the game. Singapore with a chance to win. They have the scrum feed. It's Teo. Teo goes herself on the 22. Penalty. UAE now with the ball. As the final whistle sounds, what can UAE do from 45 meters out of their own line? Back to the 22. That was off her shins. Not a knock on. UAE using the blind side. Still on the blind, back on the inside. UAE using the ball well, and now it's a huge hit from Singapore. Great hit from number 8 there, Ong Yi. UAE now. That's big Cooney. Cooney away from one, can't get away from the other. Pops the ball back up. UAE using the ball. They're on the 40. Great tackle from behind from Singapore. They get the clean out. They've reached the halfway line. Penalty to Singapore. Holding on. The final siren has gone in the background. Could this be the final play or the last ditch play for Singapore? What can they do from 50 meters out? Who will be the clutch play? Singapore, is that Teo going around, chased down by UAE, and she gets her. Big Cooney with the save. That's great defense there from UAE. And that is time. Extra time. Yeah. We will see the first extra time here of the tournament. After 14 minutes of regular time, the scores are locked in at 10-all. Dramatic scenes here in Jakarta in the first semi-finals of the women's pool. The winner of this match will go straight into the final this afternoon, but it is 10-10 with extra time to come. Don't go away.
How about that? What a comeback by Singapore after trailing 10-0, and it's all square, 10-all, and the first match to get tied, and we are going for the extra time. And mind you, this is the semi-final, number one for the all-important finals. Whoever wins will play either India or the home team, Indonesia.
So just to let you know, because it has been a draw in this first semi-final, 10-all, Singapore versus UAE, it will be now extra time of a maximum of 5 minutes each way. So 5 minutes each way. But it is with a golden point rule. So the first one to score will be deemed the winners with a maximum of 5 minutes each way. Best of luck to these teams. Dramatic scenes here between UAE and Singapore in the women's pool, the first semi-final. The winner of this game going straight into the final this afternoon. It is 10-all, extra time coming up, golden point time. So Singapore will kick off from right to left of your screen. These are the types of games that heroes are made of. Who will come up with a clutch play from Singapore or UAE? Who will stand up and say, this is mine? That's a great take from UAE. Very brave of UAE there, number 9, Alex Cook. UAE with the ball now. That's a small little player there. UAE now in their 40. Penalty to Singapore. UAE not releasing. A big opportunity there. Quick tap and go from Singapore. She throws the dummy. Singapore have a chance. Singapore in the corner. Singapore. Try to Singapore. What dramatic scenes here for the Singaporeans. They are through to the final of the Cup of the 2022 Asia Rugby Sevens Trophy. Congratulations to Singapore. Golden point at its best. I think that was number 5, Eve Robinson, with the clutch play for Singapore. She gets her side into the finals this afternoon. Great game to the UAE team. We'll see you in the playoff for 3rd. We'll be back shortly. Okay. Man, that was a good pass, man. Seriously. The opener number 5, Eve Robinson. Woohoo!